Okay, I've got a little bit of a different issue here. What do you do when you have a reoccurring problem on a vehicle? The customer's been back several times, and I must say he's been very patient, very loyal customer. We have this Buick Lacrosse with a 3.6, and let me see if I can get my scanner to come up here. You can see one of the things I like about this scanner, by the way, is if I've ever scanned the vehicle with this scanner, it keeps a record on the hard drive of the vehicle and whatever information I fill out. Usually I just have the vehicle and the VIN number. Sometimes I'll put the mileage in there. I don't usually put the name unless it's a used car dealer. I'll put the car dealer name under last name, just so I know if it ever shows up under that VIN again that, oh, the last time we scanned it, it was owned by the dealer. But you can see we've had all kinds of issues with this going all the way back to June 16th. This is the first time he came in. Had a rough road circuit. We had some oxygen sensor codes, camshaft sensor codes, which I found some wiring issue. You can see I have the whole thing tore apart. This is the engine computer right here. The wires going to it, and I pulled a schematic of where the crank signals come, and I always highlight it so I don't have to, because that's a lot easier to look at when you're trying to do your testing than trying to figure out this. You know, this is the crank position sensor, and this is the computer and the pin outs. So I just transfer it over to the pin out, so it's real easy for me. And I'll take the first one on each side and see what colors they are. So because when you're looking at it backwards, you're looking at the pin out this way, but sometimes you're looking at it this way, so it's easy to get the orientation confused. So you'll take, okay, there's a gray and black wire, which is right there, gray and black, so I know I've got the orientation correct, and that's pin 49, so, or pin 49 right there, and pin 49 right there, so I can go across and know pin 49. If I can see it, it's this first one up here on the right corner. But anyhow, I found some wiring issues with the cam sensor and the oxygen sensors, and that was really the codes we were getting at first. And basically this engine has an oil leak on the back side, and it's not a real super bad leak to where he's wanting to spend a lot of money to, because you'd have to pull this intake and all off to get to the rear valve covers. So anyhow, the oil has deteriorated the wire, and the coating on the wire, the insulation, it's just crumbling. And so a lot of the cam sensors, you can see this one I've already fixed. I had to go in and replace the wiring and retwist it, because they're twisted pair of wires. Let's see, they're twisted pair of wires, and so when the insulation crumbles on, when the insulation crumbles on both sides, it just direct short circuits. So anyhow, we've had a problem with that, and we fixed those wires, and the cam sensors and the oxygen sensor codes went away. And then we started getting crank sensor codes right there, crankshaft position sensor, had a wheel sensor code which we fixed, and just different things. But mainly we could not get the crank sensor code to go away, and it seemed like it would be fine for like 2 weeks. He would run like a top, never have a problem, and all of a sudden the check engine light would come on, and it would go into reduced power mode. And when we check in the pins between, this is the crank sense. Hopefully you can see that. I can't tell, the sun's shining on my screen, so I can't even see what I'm pointing at. But this is the crank sensor pigtail right here. So you'd go between this side, the the two pins here that are crank sensor, and these two pins right here with your ohms meter, and see if you have an open or shorted. Well, we could never find a problem. The circuits were fine, but then 2 weeks later the car would come back. So this last time when it came back, I decided I was going to pull the whole wiring harness, and you can see it's a job. Had to pull this power steering. Let me move my scanner out of the way here. Had to pull this power steering reservoir out of the way, and this wire goes all the way down the front of the engine, and then it shoots back between the engine and the transmission, and you literally have, you know, an inch of clearance. You can barely get your hand up there, and I had to disconnect a bunch of brackets and wiring. But I don't know if you could see this, but you can see this white wire right there, how it's bare, if it'll focus, how it's bare. This aluminum foil here is like it basically is a electrical aluminum foil wrap. I'm not sure what the technical name is, but it's actually a ground that wraps around this. This is also a twisted pair, and it's to prevent electrical interference. Now over here, this aluminum is a heat tape. It's because it goes behind the exhaust system. But what I wanted to show you is what I found right here. And once again, I can't see if it's showing it, but you can see that blue wire is bare, and the ground wire is right there, and the white wire is also bare. And just the vibration of the engine moves it a certain way to where it shorts out. And it's amazing that the engine didn't stall. It just went into a reduced power mode and set the crankshaft position sensor code. I believe since it was already running when it happens, it was using the cam position sensors to keep the engine running, because it knew where the camshafts were in position, and it lost the crank position sensor. So now I got to take this all apart and take this aluminum foil off, unwrap it, and fix these wires, and then put it all back together and rewrap it so that it'll be oil proof. I'll tape it all up like I taped these up. But I just thought it was interesting. Sometimes you just gotta go with your instincts, and I knew it had to be in this harness, even though my ohms meter was saying there was no problem with the wiring. You know, this actually connects right here into this connector here, and this bolts to the engine. So I couldn't move it and pull it out without taking that connector, and there's a bolt on each one of these holes here that holds it to the engine. So it's just one of those things where you just have to keep with it and pull things apart. And another issue that the manufacturers don't make it easy to get to these things, and people wonder why it costs so much to fix their car when your scanner tells you everything there is wrong with it. It's a misnomer. It gave me a crank sensor code, but there was nothing wrong with the crank sensor. It was in the wiring, and it just takes some detective work and actually pulling it all apart to find the problem. And then I tell people all the time, once I tell you what the problem is, if you have basic soldering skills, you could probably fix this yourself if you're a do-it-yourselfer. Rewire, you know, replace that wiring section and retape it up and all, and plug it back in. But it's having the skills to figure out where the problem is what you're paying for. This scanner doesn't tell me, oh, pull that wire out and find a short where the insulation has deteriorated because of an oil leak. It just tells me there's a crank sensor code, and 90% of the shops out there would have put a new crank sensor in and said, oh, well, it's still setting a code, it must be a computer. So then they'd put a new computer in, and it's still setting the codes, and they'll be like, I don't know what to tell you, you're gonna have to go somewhere else. And that's usually when I get it, or I get it when they will tell you it needs a computer, but they don't do programming, so they'll send it up here for me to program the new computer. And I usually tell them that, you know, very rarely does new computers go bad. I have replaced a few over the years, but from the mid 2000s up, they're pretty bulletproof in general, unless somebody's hooked the jumper cables up wrong or shorted it out trying to test with a test light and loaded the circuit, or it's been in a physical accident where, you know, the computer was destroyed and physically smashed in an accident. So I just thought it was a little bit different. I'm glad that I finally figured it out, and the customer's glad. I'm glad that this isn't a vehicle that they use every day, but he does want to be able to have it as a reliable form of transportation. So we're going to get it back together and hopefully get it back to him this afternoon. And so if you enjoy these I hope you enjoy these videos, and we'll catch you on the next one.